It was just another Tuesday at the office, or so I thought. As I scrolled through Instagram during my lunch break, my whole world came crashing down. The video that appeared on my screen felt like a cruel joke. My best friend Sarah, radiant in a white wedding dress, exchanging vows with James, my boyfriend of 4 years. The black tuxedo he wore matched the one we had picked out together for our future wedding. My hands shook as I watched them at the Golden Palace Hotel, the very venue James and I had dreamed about for our special day. Every detail was a knife to my heart. The white and pink roses we had chosen, the soft golden lighting we had planned, and even Perfect by Ed Sheeran playing in the background, our song. The crash of my coffee cup hitting the floor brought my assistant Amy running in. "Maria? What happened?" she asked, worried. I couldn't find my voice. I just turned my phone toward her. Her shocked, "Oh my God," said everything I couldn't. "But isn't James at that medical conference in Chicago?" The pieces started falling into place like a terrible puzzle. For 3 months, James had been too busy at the hospital, canceling our dates and barely texting. Sarah had mysteriously changed her number and stopped responding to my messages. I had been so blind, trusting them both completely. Looking back now, all the red flags were screaming at me. Sarah's constant, accidental appearances at our lunch dates, the way she would casually touch James's arm while laughing at his jokes, and those late-night messages about her work problems, it was all part of their plan. I stared at James's message from this morning. "Missing you, babe. This conference is so boring. Can't wait to come home to you." The lies made me feel sick. My finger hovered over the keyboard. But what do you say to the man who just married your best friend behind your back? The words wouldn't come. When I opened Sarah's Instagram profile, the betrayal hit even harder. Their wedding photos were everywhere. The intimate first dance, champagne toasts with their families, and a honeymoon suite I recognized from our own plans. Under their first dance photo, Sarah's caption read, "When you just know." How long had they been planning this while pretending to be my boyfriend and best friend? Below Sarah's perfect wedding caption, comments flooded in. "Love finds its way," and "You two are meant to be." My phone exploded with messages from friends. "Lana, did you see? I can't believe they would do this. Are you okay?" The concern in their messages felt suffocating. I switched off my phone, unable to bear their pity, and stumbled to the office bathroom. The stranger in the mirror wore my face, but her eyes held a hollow look I'd never seen before. Just this morning, I had been Lana Chin, the successful marketing director who seemed to have it all. Now what was I? The naive woman who couldn't see her boyfriend falling for her best friend right under her nose? I let out a bitter laugh, remembering how just last week I'd been twirling in white dresses, planning my own wedding. The engagement ring James had given me after 4 years suddenly felt like poison on my finger. I ripped it off and shoved it deep into my purse, wishing I could bury the memories as easily. Every memory now had a dark shadow over it. Sarah, pretending to be the excited best friend, helping me pick out engagement party decorations. Was she already sharing his bed then? Her tearful acceptance of my maid of honor request. Was she laughing at my stupidity? All those emergency surgeries that made James miss our anniversary dinners, were they really just dinner dates with her? Each revelation felt like another punch to my gut. My chest tightened as the walls seemed to close in. Through the fog of my growing panic attack, I heard Amy's voice. "Ms. Chin, Maxwell Industries is here for your 2 p.m. The room started spinning wildly. "Cancel everything," I managed to gasp before my legs gave out in the bathroom. Amy's worried face appeared above me, her voice growing distant as darkness crept in from the edges of my vision. The last thing I heard was her calling for an ambulance. The harsh hospital lights greeted me when I came to, along with the rhythmic beeping of monitors. "Severe anxiety attack," the doctor explained gently. My phone on the bedside table lit up continuously with worried messages from friends and family. The irony wasn't lost on me. The two people I trusted most were probably sipping champagne on some exotic beach, according to their latest Instagram update tagged "had honeymoon bliss." As I lay in that sterile hospital room, something shifted inside me. The old Lana Chin, the one who believed in true love and trusted too easily, died today. In her place, a stronger version of me would rise, someone who would never again let anyone make her feel this worthless. My hands steady for the first time that day, I signed the hospital discharge papers against medical advice. This was just the beginning. My phone lit up with a text from an unknown number, a sleek business card from Maxwell Industries attached. "Ms. Chin, our takeover proposal still stands. Perhaps we could discuss it over dinner tomorrow." I stared at the message, feeling something stir inside me. A plan began taking shape in my mind, piece by piece. James and Sarah probably thought they'd destroyed me, but they had no idea. They'd actually set me free. Maxwell Industries was exactly what I needed, not just for success, but for transformation. By the time those two returned from their picture-perfect honeymoon, they wouldn't recognize the woman they'd betrayed. I stepped out of the hospital into the night, the cool air clearing my head. Let them post their sunset beach photos and romantic dinner snapshots. Karma was patient, and so was I. They were about to learn that every debt comes due, and I was ready to become Karma's most dedicated collector. 2 months flew by. Now I sat in Richard Maxwell's penthouse office, 50 stories above the city, discussing terms that would change everything. The deal was straightforward. His investment would turn my local marketing firm into an international force, while I would completely reinvent his company's image. "Miss Chin," Richard said, his steel-gray eyes studying me as he slid the contract across his polished mahogany desk. "Your reputation is impressive, but this is big, industry-changing big. Are you certain you're ready?" The old Lana would have second-guessed herself, but that Lana was gone. I signed my name with a steady hand, not even pausing to read the fine print. "When do we begin?" The next morning, I walked into my office wearing a Chanel suit that cost more than my car payment. My first move? Clearing house. Anyone who had known about James and Sarah's deception but chose silence, gone by noon. When the dust settled, half the desks stood empty. Only Amy remained, the one person who'd had the courage to tell me the truth when she discovered it. "You're making headlines," Amy said, bringing me my afternoon coffee. "The business world can't stop talking about the Maxwell deal." I opened my laptop to find our stock had skyrocketed 40% since the morning announcement. My phone buzzed. Richard again. "Dinner tonight? There's someone you should meet." That evening, at Le Cirque, where even billionaires needed weeks for a reservation, Richard introduced me to his nephew, Alexander Maxwell. The moment he turned those intense green eyes my way, I understood why he was considered the city's most eligible bachelor, and why every socialite in town was desperate to catch his attention. Alexander Maxwell was everything the society magazines claimed: striking green eyes, perfectly styled dark hair, and a smile that could charm anyone. "The famous Miss Chin," he said smoothly, pulling out my chair with old-world courtesy. "Uncle Richard can't stop praising your vision." Throughout dinner, we talked about everything from modern art to obscure business theories. Not once did he mention my very public heartbreak, which had become the city's favorite gossip. Instead, he spoke to me as an equal, someone worthy of respect. Time flew by, and my company soared to new heights. We weren't just successful, we were unstoppable. International clients fought for our attention. Our offices spread across 3 continents, and our revenue doubled every quarter. Business magazines plastered my face on their covers, calling me the marketing genius who was reshaping the industry. I was reviewing our latest quarterly reports when Amy burst into my office. "Lana, you need to see this," she said, grabbing the remote. James appeared on the wall-mounted TV, looking nothing like the confident doctor I once knew. He fumbled through questions about the hospital's financial crisis, a crisis that deepened after I'd convinced their major donors to invest in Maxwell Industries instead. The hospital faces unprecedented challenges, James stuttered, tugging at his collar. The reporter went for the kill. Your wife's social media posts show luxury vacations while the hospital considers layoffs. How do you respond to donors' concerns? I turned off the TV, hiding my satisfaction. Sarah's need to show off their perfect life had played right into my hands. Wealthy donors didn't appreciate seeing their contributions fund first-class trips to tropical islands. Miss Chin? Amy's voice interrupted my thoughts. Alexander Maxwell is here. He walked in carrying coffee and a leather folder. I wanted you to see this first, he said, his eyes holding mine as he handed me the documents. Inside was a joint venture proposal between our companies, a deal worth billions. Why choose me? I asked, studying his face for answers. His response was immediate and sincere. Because you're extraordinary, Lana. When they betrayed you, you could have crumbled. Instead, you built something remarkable. That evening at the Business Excellence Awards, I accepted the Entrepreneur of the Year award in a stunning red Versace that made every head turn. James and Sarah sat in the audience, representing their struggling hospital. Looking directly at them, I spoke into the microphone. Success is often called the best revenge, but true success isn't about getting even, it's about discovering your own power. Later, I escaped to the quiet balcony. Alexander found me there, draping his jacket over my shoulders when he noticed my shiver. Powerful speech, he said softly. Did you mean what you said about revenge? I turned to face him, suddenly aware of how close we were standing. I thought revenge was what I wanted, I confessed. But now, I just want to be happy. He moved closer, his fingers gently brushing against mine, and in that moment, I felt something I thought I'd never feel again: hope. The headlines next morning told a new story. Photos of Alexander and me leaving the awards ceremony flooded social media. The business world hummed with speculation about our companies merging, and perhaps our lives too. Each news article sent our stock prices climbing higher. When Sarah tried reaching out through friends, "She misses you, she's so sorry," I was too occupied with board meetings to care. James's desperate email about needing donors back got a one-word response to my assistant: archive. 6 months after the Maxwell Industries deal, I threw open the doors of my Central Park penthouse for a charity gala. The city's power players watched as Alexander and I unveiled our billion-dollar foundation for young entrepreneurs. Amy appeared at my elbow during the applause. "You've done it," she murmured. "Your net worth now exceeds the entire hospital's budget." I surveyed the room, my success reflected in the crystal chandeliers, in Alexander's warm smile, in the endless possibilities ahead. A news alert buzzed. Hospital board announces leadership changes. Dr. James Mitchell steps down. I swiped it away without a second glance. Their story belonged to my past, not my future. Ready to show them what's next? Alexander squeezed my hand, his touch now familiar and comforting. The woman who once cried in a hospital room was gone. This new version of me was just warming up. Spring painted the city in cherry blossoms, marking the beginning of something new. Alexander and I found ourselves lingering over business dinners until midnight, discussing everything from childhood dreams to future plans. One evening, walking through the botanical gardens after a fundraiser, he stopped beneath a flowering arch. "I've been keeping count," he said, his green eyes twinkling in the garden lights. "We've had exactly 43 business meetings, but I haven't properly asked you on a real date." He looked almost nervous, something I'd never seen in the confident Alexander Maxwell. I pulled out my phone, pretending to check my schedule. "Well, Mr. Maxwell, I might have an opening." The next evening, his private jet touched down in Paris just in time for dinner. As we sat atop the Eiffel Tower, city lights sparkling like scattered diamonds below. He reached for my hand. "You're unlike anyone I've ever met, Lana," he said softly. "Most people let betrayal break them. You let it remake you." For the first time since that devastating Instagram video, I felt my walls completely crumble. We talked until sunrise, sharing stories about our childhood dreams, our deepest fears, and our hopes for tomorrow. The pain of betrayal that once consumed me felt distant, replaced by something warmer, something real. The sunrise kiss in Paris was nothing like my memories with James. This was different, a connection between equals, built on mutual respect and genuine understanding. When we returned home, the business world couldn't get enough of us. Headlines called us the power couple reshaping industries, and our joint ventures soared beyond expectations. I was reviewing blueprints for our new headquarters when Amy burst in, looking uncomfortable. "Lana, Sarah's here. She's insisting on seeing you." I felt my shoulders tense but nodded. "Send her in." The Sarah who walked through my door wasn't the glowing bride from those wedding photos. Her expensive clothes couldn't hide the exhaustion in her eyes. "Lana, please," she began, her voice shaking. "The hospital is crumbling. James hasn't slept properly in weeks. We need your help." I studied her silently. "That's fascinating," I replied, my voice Arctic cold. "You weren't particularly worried about my sleep when you were planning your wedding behind my back." "We fell in love," she protested weakly. "These things happen sometimes." I rose from my chair, power radiating from every inch of my designer suit. "No, Sarah. Things don't just happen. People make choices. You chose to betray me. Now you're choosing to come here because you need something. The answer is no." Alexander appeared in the doorway, immediately reading the situation. He moved to stand beside me, his presence both protective and grounding. Sarah's eyes darted between us, realization dawning. "So it's true? You and Alexander Maxwell. Is there anything else you need?" I cut her off smoothly. At the door, she paused. "We never meant to hurt you," she whispered. "But you did," I replied simply. "The difference is, I never needed revenge. My success speaks for itself." After she left, Alexander wrapped me in his arms. "You okay?" Looking up at him, I felt something click into place. You know what? I really am. For the first time in years, I'm genuinely happy. That weekend at his family's Hamptons beach house, Alexander turned to me as we walked barefoot along the shore, golden sunset painting the sky. "Lana, I need to tell you something," he said, his voice serious. "When Uncle Richard first mentioned you, I admired your business brilliance. But getting to know you, your strength, your grace under pressure, I fell in love with the woman behind the success story." My heart stuttered. No one had ever seen me so completely before. Over the following months, our relationship deepened into something I'd never experienced. Unlike James, who'd always seemed threatened by my achievements, Alexander celebrated every win with me. He threw a surprise party when I closed my biggest international deal. I was his proud date when he won Industry Leader of the Year. I was working late one evening when James's name appeared in my inbox. James's email glowed on my screen. "Seeing you with him in the papers kills me. What we had was real. I made a mistake." When I showed it to Alexander later, his response surprised me. No jealousy, just a knowing smile. He's right about one thing. He did make a mistake, the biggest one of his life. Life's irony wasn't lost on me. A year ago, I was planning a wedding with someone who betrayed me. Now, I was building an empire with a man who showed me what true partnership meant. During our quarterly board meeting, I caught Alexander watching me present our global expansion plans. His eyes held something beyond the usual pride and love, a look that made my heart flutter. That evening, at our favorite rooftop restaurant overlooking the city lights, Alexander seemed unusually nervous, fidgeting with his napkin. "Remember when we first met?" he asked. You were this unstoppable force who'd turned heartbreak into empire. I'd never seen anything like it. I laughed softly. I was just trying to survive. No, he said, his green eyes intense. You were finally showing the world who you really are. And that's why. His hand moved toward his pocket, and my breath caught as he pulled out a small velvet box. But before he could open it, his phone lit up with urgent messages from London. Major crisis at the overseas office. Go, I squeezed his hand, understanding completely. We have time. Watching him leave, I realized how different this felt from my time with James. There was no anxiety, no fear of losing him, just trust, respect, and something deeper than I'd ever known. The next morning's gossip pages showed James and Sarah in a heated argument outside a divorce lawyer's office. A year ago, this news would have felt like victory. Now, I barely registered it. Ms. Chin? Amy's voice pulled me back to reality. Tokyo investors are waiting for your call. I turned to my work. Realizing my past with James and Sarah felt like watching someone else's story, one that had led me exactly where I needed to be. Business headlines blazed across my morning news feed. Hospital board votes no confidence in Dr. Mitchell's leadership. I sipped my coffee in my penthouse office, watching the sunrise paint the city skyline. James's downfall wasn't my doing. He and Sarah had written their own ending. The board meeting footage leaked, Amy announced, setting a tablet before me. The video showed James stammering through explanations of massive financial losses, while Sarah sat behind him, dripping in designer brands, a tone-deaf display as they discussed staff layoffs. They're calling it the biggest healthcare management failure in the city's history, Amy added. Sarah's posts about their third luxury vacation this year didn't exactly help their case. I closed the tablet. Any updates from London about last night's crisis? Alexander handled everything. His plane lands this morning. Amy paused, a knowing smile spreading across her face. Should I clear your schedule for a certain interrupted dinner? A notification lit up my phone. Sarah was doing a tearful live stream, mascara running down her face. I never meant for this to happen, she sobbed to her viewers. James promised everything would be fine, that the hospital would always take care of us. The comments scrolling beneath were merciless. Former patients shared stories of canceled treatments, while the couple posted beach photos from the Maldives. Staff members revealed taking pay cuts while Sarah flaunted her luxury shopping sprees. Karma, it seemed, had perfect timing. Alexander walked in, looking gorgeously disheveled in his travel suit. London's sordid, he said, kissing my cheek. Now, about that question I was trying to ask. His phone interrupted with Richard Maxwell's call. Uncle, what do you mean they're doing what? After hanging up, he turned to me, eyes sparkling. The hospital board is offering to sell. They want Maxwell Industries to take over. I leaned back, studying him. And who would handle this takeover? Well, he smiled, I know this brilliant CEO who specializes in turning struggling institutions around. Amy burst in before he could continue. Lana, James is in the lobby. He's demanding to see you. Alexander's jaw tightened, but I touched his arm gently. Let him up. It's time to finish this. The James who walked in wasn't the man I'd once planned to marry. His designer suit hung wrinkled, his eyes hollow with desperation. Lana, please, he begged. The hospital needs you. I need you. Interesting, I replied, my voice arctic. I needed you once too. The night you were marrying my best friend, actually. He flinched. I made a mistake. She's not you. She never was. The hospital is my life, and now it's crumbling. The hospital isn't failing because of me, James. Your choices did that. You chose to betray someone who loved you. You chose a wife who valued Instagram likes over patient care. You chose luxury vacations over your staff's salaries. I'll do anything, he pleaded. Whatever you want. Just help save the hospital. Alexander stepped forward. every inch the business titan he was. Dr. Mitchell, you should direct any proposals to our acquisition team. Standard procedure. James looked between us, understanding dawning. You're buying the hospital? Maxwell Industries is, I corrected. And yes, I'll be leading the restructuring. The hospital will be saved, just not by you. After James slumped out, Alexander pulled me close. Have I told you lately how absolutely incredible you are? That evening, as we celebrated the hospital acquisition over champagne, my phone started buzzing with notifications. The notification lit up my phone screen. Sarah's latest social media confession. Sometimes the person you betray everything for turns out to be the wrong choice. Her words glowed in the dark. James and I are going our separate ways. I watched as comments poured in, people tagging me, calling it karma's perfect strike. But as I stared at those words, I felt strangely empty. No triumph, no satisfaction. Their pain brought me no joy. I had grown beyond that. The city lights danced through the restaurant windows as Alexander reached for my hand. His touch was warm, steady. You know, he said, his voice soft but sure, I've been trying to ask you something for days now. This time, fate didn't interrupt. No phones rang, no emergencies called. Just us, the gentle hum of the city, and a question that would bridge my past to my future. The ring caught the light differently than James's had. Where his had been showy, this one was thoughtfully elegant, unique. It told our story, not perfect, but real. When news of our engagement spread through the hospital grapevine the next morning, Sarah's email arrived like a final whisper of the past. Congratulations. You won. You got everything. The success, the man, the hospital. I hope it makes you happy. I let my finger hover over the delete button for a moment. She still saw life as a competition, missing the point entirely. This wasn't about winning, it was about becoming. The hospital board's announcement of James's resignation felt like closing a chapter. Sarah's hometown return and their vanishing wedding photos from social media were just footnotes in a story I was no longer reading. Ready to save a hospital? Alexander spread the acquisition papers across my desk, his eyes bright with possibility. My engagement ring caught the morning sun as I leaned forward. Ready to build an empire? The words tasted like freedom. Late that night, reviewing renovation plans, it hit me. True revenge wasn't in watching your enemies fall. It was in rising so high that their betrayal became nothing but a distant memory, a hard lesson that led to something greater. The universe, with its mysterious sense of justice, had written a better ending than I could have planned. 2 weeks before my wedding, I stood in my renovated office. Gone were James's self-congratulatory medical awards. In their place hung blueprints for the future, state-of-the-art research facilities, innovative patient care programs. My new beginning. Miss Chin, my assistant's voice broke through my thoughts. There's someone here to see you, your mother. Mom stepped in, her eyes taking in the changes. Her presence was unexpected. We hadn't spoken since she'd chosen their side, claiming I was too career-focused, and Sarah would make a better wife. Now she stood before me, looking smaller than I remembered. The hospital looks different, she offered, her voice carrying years of unspoken words. Better. She paused, wringing her hands. Sarah's mother called me. She's worried. Sarah's not doing well, Lana. The weight of those words hung in the air between us, heavy with history and choices made. I kept signing documents, my voice carefully neutral as I addressed my mother. She's back living with her parents, taking anxiety medication, and you came here to tell me this because? The pen felt heavy in my hand as I deliberately maintained my focus on the papers before me. Because she wants to see you before your wedding, to apologize properly. Mom's voice wavered. James, too. He's leaving the city, taking a position at a small clinic in another state. They both want closure. The word made me set down my pen. the sound sharp in the quiet office. Closure? I tasted the bitterness of the word. They had their chance for that when they were planning their wedding behind my back. Lana, please. Mom's plea echoed with desperation. You've won. You have everything now. Can't you find it in your heart to forgive? As if summoned by the rising tension, Alexander appeared in my doorway. His presence filled the room as he moved to stand beside me, a silent guardian. Is everything okay here? Mom's eyes widened as she took in Alexander's protective stance and the diamond ring catching light on my finger. You must be the fiancé, she managed. I'm Lana's mother, she added. Then, with a hint of shame, the one who told her she wasn't wife material. Alexander's voice carried the chill of a winter morning. Interesting timing, showing up 2 weeks before our wedding. The sharp ring of my office phone cut through the tension. The hospital board, confirming the final transfer of ownership. As I placed the receiver down, a strange sense of completion washed over me, like the final piece of a puzzle clicking into place. Mom, I said quietly, meeting her eyes, I don't need closure with James and Sarah. I'm not angry anymore. I'm not hurt. I'm just done. They're part of my past, and I've built a future I love. She started to protest, but I held up my hand, firm but gentle. If you want to be part of this future, my wedding, my life, you're welcome. But only if you accept that I'm not the same person they hurt. I'm stronger now, happier. The Maxwell mansion glowed that evening during our engagement party. Whispers followed me like shadows, stories of James and Sarah trying to secure invitations through mutual friends. Some guests, with wine-loosened tongues, even suggested I invite them, calling it a power move. Alexander pulled me onto the dance floor, his eyes twinkling. You know, we could move the wedding up, escape all this drama. I laughed, resting my head on his shoulder, breathing in his familiar scent. I want the big wedding. I want everyone to see that their betrayal didn't break me. It set me free. The next morning brought an uninvited visitor. Sarah stood in my office, having somehow slipped past security. She looked different, stripped of her designer armor and perfect makeup. Just a woman who'd lost everything. 2 minutes, I said, not offering her a seat. That's all you get. I'm sorry, she burst out, words tumbling like falling dominoes. I was jealous. You had everything. The career, the man, the future. I thought if I took James, I'd get that life too. But it was all fake. I studied her, this woman who had once been the architect of my pain, and felt nothing but pity. You didn't take anything from me, Sarah. You showed me what I deserved wasn't what I had. Can we ever? She started, hope trembling in her voice. No, I cut her off, gentle but firm. We can't. But I forgive you. Not for you, but for me. Because carrying anger is exhausting, and I have better things to do with my energy. As security led her out, I caught sight of James waiting in the lobby. Our eyes met across the space where we'd once walked together, now a chasm of memories and mistakes neither of us would cross again. Our eyes met across the lobby, but it felt like looking at a photograph from someone else's life. I heard you're leaving town, I said, my voice steady. James nodded, his gaze dropping to the polished floor. I thought, he paused, searching for words. I don't know what I thought, that you'd collapse without me? Instead, you became this incredible force. The woman I see in the business magazines, I barely recognize her. That's because you never really saw me, James. The truth flowed easily now. You saw what you wanted to see. Alexander's timing was perfect, arriving for our lunch meeting. He took in the scene with one glance, simply nodded at James, and slipped his hand into mine. The contrast wasn't lost on any of us. Congratulations, James said, his eyes lingering on our intertwined fingers. You deserve this, all of it. As his footsteps faded away, Alexander squeezed my hand. "You okay?" I smiled, the realization washing over me like warm sunlight. You know what? That wasn't closure. We had closure the moment I stopped letting their choices define my future. That evening, I sat in my home office, deleting old photos of James and Sarah. Not with anger or regret, but with the peaceful certainty of archiving an old book you've outgrown. Each click felt like setting down another unnecessary weight. Amy helped me pack up my old office the next day, carefully handling the awards I'd won during my time with James. "What should we do with these?" she asked, holding up a crystal plaque. "Display them," I decided, running my finger along the engraved letters. "They're part of my journey, even if he was too." The wedding invitations went out in elegant cream envelopes. Mom's call came hours later, her voice thick with tears, saying she was proud of the woman I'd become. When mutual friends suggested inviting James and Sarah for closure, I watched Alexander across the hospital atrium, passionately discussing renovation plans with staff members, his vision for healthcare matching mine perfectly. "I already have everything I need," I told them simply. I caught a glimpse of Sarah leaving town with her parents, a quiet exodus compared to her grand arrival years ago. James had already disappeared to his small-town clinic. Their perfect wedding photos vanished, replaced by brief mentions of their divorce in local news. But I was too immersed in blueprints and future plans to follow their story anymore. "Ready to become Mrs. Maxwell?" Alexander asked that evening as we reviewed final wedding details over takeout in my office. I kissed him softly, tasting promises that felt real. Ready to continue being exactly who I am, just with a better partner by my side. The universe had a poetic sense of timing, bringing me full circle to the hospital where my story with James began. But now, I wasn't the young doctor in love with the promising surgeon. I was the woman who had alchemized betrayal into triumph, heartbreak into an empire, and found authentic love in the process. My wedding morning painted the city in gold, the skyline stretching endlessly beyond my penthouse windows. Unlike the intimate ceremony I'd once planned with James, this celebration would be a statement, not of revenge or wealth, but of transformation. "The press is already gathering outside," Amy said, adjusting the folds of my custom French gown. The masterpiece of craftsmanship made me look like what I'd become, powerful yet graceful, strong yet feminine. "Let them watch," I smiled, touching the diamond necklace Alexander had sent over. His note made my heart flutter. "For the woman who turned pain into power. Can't wait to call you my wife." The Grand Plaza Hotel's ballroom sparkled like a captured snowfall. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic light across thousands of white roses, each petal perfect as a promise. In the bridal suite, Mom appeared just as I finished my final preparations, her eyes glistening. "Lana," she whispered, voice thick with emotion, "I was so wrong about you. You've become more than I ever imagined possible." The first notes of the wedding march floated through the air, and the massive doors swung open. There stood Alexander at the altar, devastatingly handsome in his black tuxedo. When his eyes found me, they filled with tears, and suddenly the room full of hundreds faded away. Each step down the aisle felt deliberate, meaningful, not just walking toward my future, but walking away from a past that no longer had power over me. Just as the minister began to speak, chaos erupted from the back of the hall. Sarah's voice, shrill and desperate, cut through the sacred moment. "Stop! This should have been my life." She ran toward us, mascara creating dark rivers down her cheeks, but I didn't flinch, didn't run, didn't break. When Alexander moved instinctively to shield me, I squeezed his hand and stepped forward instead. "Sarah," I said, my voice carrying calm authority, "you already had your perfect wedding. How did that work out?" The silence that followed was absolute. Sarah stood frozen, her designer knockoff dress a pale echo of my couture gown, a visual metaphor for how her borrowed dreams had played out. With a subtle nod to security, they appeared to escort her out. Through the crowd, I caught James trying to intervene, looking aged and diminished, like a photograph that had faded in the sun. Turning back to Alexander, I smiled. Now, where were we? Our vows rose from the heart. You didn't just heal my heart, I told him, my voice strong and clear. You showed me it was never broken, just preparing for something greater. The reception transformed into more than a wedding celebration. It became a testament to resilience. Business titans and socialites watched as Alexander and I took our first dance to Rise Up, the song that had carried me through my darkest nights. The melody wrapped around us like a promise fulfilled. Alexander took the microphone, his voice warm with pride. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to share something. When I first met Lana, she was already extraordinary, but watching her turn pain into purpose, betrayal into success, that's when I knew she was the one. Not because she needed saving, but because she saved herself. Our 10-tier cake told our story in sugar and elegance, each layer a milestone. The hospital's resurrection, our business merger. The moment love found us when we weren't looking. Outside, news helicopters circled like mechanical fireflies, capturing images that would grace business magazines. Power couple seals the deal. Later, in our honeymoon suite, overlooking the city lights we'd helped shape, Alexander pulled me close. Happy, Mrs. Maxwell? Happier than I've ever been, I answered, meaning every word. But not because of the name or the empire. I rested my head against his chest, listening to his heartbeat, knowing that true power isn't in the empires we build or the revenge we pursue. It's in becoming exactly who we're meant to be, with someone who sees that person clearly. Dawn spilled across the city as I stood at our penthouse window, the truth settling in my heart like morning light. Sometimes losing everything is just life's way of showing you what you're capable of gaining. My phone buzzed. One last message from James. I saw the wedding photos. You look happier than you ever did with me. I'm sorry I couldn't be the man you deserved. I watched my finger hover over the delete button for a moment before pressing it. Some chapters don't need an epilogue. Some stories are better left to rest in the past's quiet corners. Ready for our next adventure? Alexander's voice was warm honey behind me. He held out his hand, sunlight catching his wedding band. Looking at him, my husband, my partner, my equal, I understood with crystal clarity that every tear, every betrayal, every moment of pain had been stepping stones leading me precisely where I needed to be. Ready, I smiled, slipping my hand into his. Our private jet waited on the tarmac, a silver promise of new beginnings. As we climbed through the clouds, I caught a final glimpse of the hospital where everything had changed. It stood proud against the skyline, no longer a monument to what I'd lost, but a testament to what I'd gained. Strength that surprised me, success that fulfilled me, and a love story far better than the one I'd thought was my ending. Sarah and James's betrayal. It had been a gift wrapped in thorns. It freed me from the confines of being someone's betrayed ex-girlfriend and catalyzed my transformation into who I truly was, a force of nature who turned heartbreak into an empire. As we soared toward the horizon, toward our future, I realized the truth about revenge. The best revenge isn't about getting even, it's about getting better. And that's exactly what I did. The story hadn't ended with their betrayal. It had begun.